Once a year, Will and I like to sit down and discuss movies that are present, and those movies are our top 10 best films of the year 2024. We also like to take in the Academy Awards and the Oscars of this year, and we're going to talk about those and give our predictions and our choices and just have a lot of fun in this episode because it's not often Will and I are in, more modern times with our audience. So, Will, where is this episode ranked for you out of some of the ones that we do?
Oh yeah, this one's exciting for me because I feel like I have a better vocabulary to talk about these films because it's happening in my time. So
Sure.
I get a little bit more excited to actually feel like I know what I'm talking about here. So
Yeah, I feel like with every year we get closer to more modern present day, it's just going to be a little bit more exciting because we'll have more references, our catalog of films that we'll be able to pick from right off top of our head. It just will seem like we're more credible in the field, you know,
sure.
just as we get going and get closer. So, with all that being said, Will, the way I look at the year 2024, I'm going to sum it up like this. Just because films can be musicals, the question is, should they? Um, where are you at in the year 2024 as a year in cinema overall? I think at one point in time when we were 6, 7 months in, we were talking about everything kind of being so close, but yet
Hmm.
still missing. Where you at when everything concluded?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that we did the year 1933 during 2024 because we chatted at the wrap up of that episode kind of like this year was pretty good, but there wasn't like a great film, right? And
Right.
here I think there's a great film. I think there's two. But I think that everything else is kind of like almost there but not quite. And admittedly there are a couple films I feel like if I rewatched again, I might lift my year, the 2024, up a little bit higher. But ultimately, this year was down from last year, especially when you start talking about the Oscar specific movies. Last year's Oscar movies were a much better 10 movies than this year's.
Well, let's see if we can get that list up real quick. Oscar Best Pictures for 2023. Let's just real quick, if we can. The one that won it last year, right? Am I correct?
Mhm.
Was Everything Everywhere All at Once, or was that
That
two
was
years
two
ago?
years ago.
Okay,
Oppenheimer was last year.
Oppenheimer was last year. Okay, so I've got
Yep.
this one wrong here.
Poor
Um,
Things, Anatomy of a Fall, Zone of Interest.
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
so like all four of those films were like standout great movies for me, just off the top of my head that I can think of. And then the rest of the crop outside of what was it, Mank, um, were really good films. This year, it's kind of like, man, I like this film a lot, but there's something missing, right? I felt like that for about four or five of the Oscar picks this year.
See, it's funny because I kind of was right there with you. I felt like I seen in the last month, I felt like I seen some really damn good movies. But with what you're saying, still needed to go a little bit further. So I'll give you an example. Let me bring up the best picture candidates from last year. You named a few, but I just want to list them all in order if we could. Where am I at? Where am I? Right here. Oppenheimer. Obviously, that's the one that won. That was a great movie. It's a superior movie. It's the reason it won. Uh, American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. Before we get into this year's top 10 that are
Yeah.
nominated, it felt like there was, the big picture always does things in tiers sometimes.
Hmm.
It felt like last year, to me, there would have been 3 tiers, and this year, maybe there's 4.
Hmm.
Um, just because I want to give certain films a little bit more love than maybe you are, but maybe not. We'll see when we get there, I suppose. This year for me overall, I felt like it started off real slow, and I was pleasantly surprised the last month and a half as I was prepping for this episode to find out that, okay, maybe things were a little closer than I thought. I still think the best movie in the last 2 years is Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Um, but I think my number one might surprise you. So we'll see.
Okay.
Um, anything else you want to add as far as 24 overall, like the just overall movie experience? Do you know how many movies you watched in the last year?
Yeah, I was looking at it before we got on here. I got to 87 this year.
Oh my God. Well, I am not worthy to be co-hosting the show with you then. I did I did just half of that with you.
Oh,
I'm around 40 some modern movies. That is so wild. Holy
yeah.
crap. How many movies you watch in a week then? You get down to two, maybe three, four?
Well, so I was looking at Letterbox is an amazing website, no free ads, but I love Letterbox. If you pay for the Patreon, you can look at all your stats, right? And I've watched 38 movies in the last 2 months from
Wow.
2024. So that's kind of me plugging for the show, right? Trying to get ready for to talk about the Oscars. Um, but before then, I'm watching 3 or 4 movies a week. So I watched 87 2024 films, but I think I got to about 140 total films last year that were first time watches. So
And that's got to be a PR, right? That's got to be a year's best for you, or you
yeah,
don't think so? Or do you think when we were kids, 16, 17, 18, we might have snuck more in, but we just didn't have letterbox?
yeah, no, I think that's probably it. I also think that when we were kids, we probably rewatch stuff a lot more than we do now. I'm not a
Sure.
big rewatcher, so
Yeah. Well, and a lot of that has to do with the way we watch movies now. I've told you this on this show before, but like when HBO was a thing, the main thing to get movies, you'd catch yourself in the middle of The Departed and you're like, yep, got to watch this. And then you're like, okay, next thing you know, you watch that scene that leads into the rest of the movie. And that's just how it is, right? So it was a lot easier and more fun to rewatch things back then. Now it's
yeah,
like you definitely have to seek it out and you're more maybe we're older too, so it's like the idea of wasting your time on something you've already seen because time is
yeah,
so limited and precious in our lives. There's a little bit
definitely
of
part of
that too. Yeah. So, um, let me ask you this before we transition overall, Will, to some fun Academy Award anecdotes.
it. Yeah.
What does the Academy Awards mean to you specifically? Why um, do we? I mean, I know why we give it the clout that we give it, right? But
Yeah.
what has it meant to you over the years? Why do you have a more of an admiration for this particular award ceremony than maybe the others?
That's a good question. I think it's probably just part of, I'm not quite old enough for it to have been like, it really, when Billy Crystal was first hosting in like the 80s and 90s, I think is the last time it was, like in the American zeitgeist. Now I think it's a little more niche. I really think it just comes down to like wanting to not just watch, I love a good blockbuster film. Like you're going to find out that my number one might be a blockbuster. I'm not sure yet. But I also love films that are trying to say something about the human condition. And I feel like the Academy still does a pretty good job of capturing that overall. And I feel like they're even getting better at it really since about 2017, 2018 when Moonlight won. It's kind of been, I think they're getting to a better place over the last 5 or 6 years, even though it might be getting a little less watched. So for me, it just is hitting what I want from the award ceremony, which is great films about human beings.
Hey, sign me up for that, buddy. That's where I'm at too. Um, I tend to like it more in a more realistic setting.
Mm.
However, that doesn't mean that I like you kind of took a dig at me in the last episode of that we recorded with our buddy Dave that'll come out in a couple weeks here. But you said something about like I'm not a big fan of the blockbuster, and that's not true. I
Mm.
love summer blockbusters. However, I what I'm not a fan of is I like let me put it this way. I guess I'm just a fan of the things I like, right? So like when
Sure.
Pirates of the Caribbean was coming out, I looked forward to that every year. That was a big summer blockbuster movie. Dark Knight, those things like that. Twisters just came out this year. Was looking forward to that movie that came out. I love a big because it feels big. It feels important. It feels like everybody is still, the kids are out of school, kids are home from school, adults, teachers are on break, whatever. You just have it feels like bulk of your movie going community is going to go to the theaters during
Yeah.
that stretch of the year, and I'm all for that. However, I do wish at times people cared more for the smaller films like The Holdovers and American Fiction, just so those movies can continue to be made and not passed up on by the studios. But it does seem like we've gotten back to a place where there is a place for the small time film. And I think the Academy Awards are doing a really good job of showing them love and balancing them out.
Yeah, for sure. And I was looking up as I watched Nickel Boys this morning because it was one of the ones I hadn't watched yet, and I was looking at like the budget for it, and how much money it's made. And it's just like, it's kind of astounding that I think it was only at like $4 million total, like worldwide.
Yeah.
And that's just a little surprising to me, because I think I don't know if it's like the marketing behind it. Because really it wasn't until the last couple of weeks I was like, wait, I've heard that this is a movie. I have no idea what it's about. Right.
Right.
I'm just curious about that kind of, that tension between like what drives me to the movie theater more often, like Alien Romulus. I saw that in theaters this year. Dune, I saw that in theaters this year. So there's two parts of me, right? And I need to get better. One thing that I learned about myself in 2024 is I need to get better at seeing those movies that I want to see talked about in the Academy Awards at the theater,
Yeah.
and put my money where my mouth is, right?
No, that makes sense because that's your only way of like speaking your voice, right? That's the only way of getting it there and saying, hey, we want to see more of these films too. Um, I totally get the Alien Romuluses and the Dunes in the theater, especially like Dune, right? That in IMAX it's an experience that you'll never forget. It's something that you'll talk about forever. I was shocked watching The Brutalist, just how like I would have been robbed if I didn't see that movie in IMAX, and how I would have been robbed of that theater experience. Who would have thought that movie would have been such the IMAX theater going experience that it became, based on like just the overall plot of that movie. You wouldn't think it would have such a in your face IMAX going experience, but it did. And if I would have watched that at home, I would have been robbed, and it might even hurt your ranking of a movie like that, right? So there is something to be said about taking these directors and these filmmakers and watching them on these screens that they were designed and met for. You know what I mean? The other thing about Nickel Boys that's unfortunate is like, yes, there's a campaign issue with, it gets nominated for an Oscar, but then everybody's competing for the best picture, and it's like they're all competing for your attention, and it's about whether or not they're going to put a lot of money behind a campaign for a movie that they might not think can win against some of the other, big names on the list, and whether or not it's worth the money to do that. Because I forget the two actors right now. I have them written down, but they're slipping me right now. But the two actors from Nickel Boys, the question is like, does anybody even know who they are? And have they been on Jimmy Kimmel? Have they been on Fallon? Have they been on these things? How many podcasts have they done? That seems to be the new Kimmel, the new way of doing things to promote these movies. And you just have they been out there? I don't know that they would be. And I would be somebody that thinks the algorithm would be set for them to see those guys. So there's that. There's a small budget movie. There's also the niche again about like, is there fatigue on racism being covered in America? And there could be some truth to that. So who knows? But those are just some of the thoughts. Just to wrap up to my own question, Will, my personal fascination with the Academy Awards started at a young age, only because movies and fascination with movies started at a young age, but it always seemed to be the more sophisticated show. I admit that I'm more of the stick up his ass. I like the more serious nature. I'm a little fatigued with the political acceptance speeches now, and I get it, but there's so many platforms now to get your voice out there. It just seems like there's not enough eyeballs on the Academy Awards anymore for that to be as impactful and maybe as it was at one time. And I would like to see us maybe get away from that and just kind of get back to the beautiful art form that it is. But that's where I'm at. I loved it when like Seth MacFarlane was, bringing in a little bit of that crude humor, but like he's the perfect guy that bring that in and still be sophisticated at the same time. So that's where I'm at with it.
Gotcha.
Let's talk about some fun anecdotes, some interesting stats if we can. By the way, we're taking ChatGPT gave me these, so I'm going to tell you that some of these are going to be 100% correct, and some of them might not be spot on. So we'll find out, but that's half-ass internet research for us here on Cinema 100. The first ceremony, Will, was May 16th, 1929 at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. It was a private dinner with about 270 guests. It's been going on for 96 years, Will. 25 we are in now. Purpose was established by the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences to honor outstanding achievement in filmmaking. And finally, the television debut of it was the Oscars were first broadcast on TV in 1953. All right, here's some things to note. Most Oscar wins. You have an idea who would be the individual who holds the most Oscar wins?
Is it Katharine Hepburn?
It is Walt Disney.
Oh,
Holds the
okay.
record with 22 Oscars and 59 nominations.
Wow. Okay.
Most
I was thinking
Oscar
that's-
wins as an actor is Katharine Hepburn, who leads with 4 Best Actress wins for movies like Morning Glory, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, The Lion and Winter, and On Golden Pond. Most nominated actor, do you know who that is?
Meryl Streep?
Oh my God, it's not even a hard one, is it?
Oh.
21 acting nominations with 3 wins. The question will be, if you were betting on Meryl Streep, does she ultimately, this is Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, does she pass Katharine Hepburn? What do you think?
Oh, man. It's getting hard. She's in her 70s now. I mean, I don't like to put brackets on people, but man, it's getting harder and harder, isn't it?
It is. It would be. I think she might be able to tie it. I'm not sure she's going to surpass it, but who knows? Who knows? We'll see. Most Oscar wins for a film. 3 films share the top spot with 11 wins each. Do you know them? I will give you a hint. 2 of them are after you were born.
Okay. I will say Parasite.
Nope.
No. Okay. The only other guess I would have then is something like No Country for Old Men.
You're missing an obvious one. 97.
Okay. 97. Oh, Titanic.
That's one. I'll give you the other year. 2003.
Oh, not gonna
This would fit. This would fit right into your blockbuster.
I'm not gonna get it.
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, geez, of course. Return of the King.
That would be the one. Return of the King. And the other one, Will, was Ben-Hur in 1959.
Gotcha.
We move on. Couple other things that I just think are fun to know is the most awarded director ever is John Ford with 4 Best Director Oscars. Only sequel to win Best Picture before The Lord of the Rings was, do you know what it is?
Godfather 2.
Attaboy. See, he knows his shit. Youngest winner at the Oscars was Tatum O'Neal, won for Best Supporting Actress at the age of 10 for the movie Paper Moon. Oldest winner went to Anthony Hopkins for The Father,
Mm-hmm.
and he won that in 2020. And then just the name, Oscar's name, the origin of the name is debated, but one popular story claims that Margaret Herrick, an Academy librarian, said that the statuette resembled her Uncle Oscar, and the name stuck. Whether that's true or not, I'll never know.
Me either.
Anything else we want to add there, Will, or are you ready to move on?
Good to go.
All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to hit our Oscars categories. So we're going to give you everything except the Best Picture. We'll do that in a little bit when we talk about our top 10 movies of the year. So clearly you'll get an idea of what Will and I think for Best Pictures. But we're going to go do everything else. We're going to do cinematography. We're going to do both the adapted screenplay and the writer or the actual screenplay. We're going to do supporting actress, supporting actor, and then the big one, which is the director. So, Will, you got one you want to start with?
No, just whatever order you got them in, man. Let's go.
Let's do it. I think it's always fun to start with kind of a fun one, like they do in the Academy Awards. So, let's start with Best Supporting Actress in a Lead Role. And the nominees are, Will, I'll give them to you here. Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown. Ariana Grande for the movie Wicked. Felicity Jones for The Brutalist. Isabella Rossellini for Conclave. And Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez. Those are your 5. First of all, before you answer, of all the categories, which one do you think is the toughest one for you to pick?
Oh, it might be Best Actress.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's a lot of good performances in there. And I feel like at the end of the day, I know who's going to win, but at the same time, I feel like there's 3 to 4 there that are worthy of a win. So, yeah. So do you want what I think's going to happen and what I want to happen?
So give
Okay.
us what you think is going to, who you think's going to win, but who you want to win.
Okay. So my for this one it's the same. My prediction and what I want is Ariana Grande. I thought she was just hilarious in Wicked. I thought she did a really good job kind of bouncing off of Cynthia Erivo's more serious role that she had to embody and just make it a little bit more playful, a little bit more fun. And I was pleasantly surprised by her performance.
Pleasant is an understatement. I thought she hit a home run here, Will. I'm right there with you. Both and both. I want her to win, and I think she will win. I don't think Wicked's gotten a lot of love in the award season so far. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Has anybody won yet from those two?
I haven't. I know the SAG is tonight, but I haven't been paying super close attention.
And there used to be a time where the SAG Awards really kind of set up the Oscars, and now it seems to be kind of they're not matching up perfectly like they used to. So who knows based on what happens here to this evening? But I'm with you. I thought she was. 1A, 1B, they were both complimenting each other. And if it wasn't for, the more serious nature of Cynthia Erivo's performance and just like the big powerhouse ballad that she got at the end, and kind of steals the whole movie, right? The question would be who's the lead. We have that debate all the time because they seemingly both have a lot of on-screen time.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think Ariana Grande, I actually think she will win this. And I just want to give a case for why. Felicity Jones in The Brutalist, she's amazing in doing her part, but I don't think she's in it enough, really. She shows up in the second half of this movie, and even then it's sporadic, and her real big moment comes at the end, and I just don't think it's enough to like dethrone Ariana Grande from that. My last couple things I would say is Monica Barbaro, who did a really good job in her portrayal of I forget the girl's name,
Joan
but
Baez, yeah.
yep. But again, just I don't think she had enough to work with. I think if you were to say, did she do a good job of like, I don't know Joan Baez. I don't know if she nailed it out of the park or not, but I do know that I felt like she did a really good job. And then the only other one I could see, so if I had to pick someone that wasn't Ariana Grande that I think will win this, I do think it's Zoe Saldana. What do you think about that? Who would you give second billing, your second choice to?
Yeah.
Not who you want, but who you think will win if it wasn't for
Yeah.
Ariana.
It does feel like Zoe Saldana. Before all of the stuff happened, all the stuff that went down kind of with Amelia Perez in the cultural zeitgeist over the last month or so.
Yeah.
I think she would have won hands down, but I think that there's a lot of kind of tension about that movie that I think it's probably going to hurt her a little bit. So I still think she was good enough to have deserved winning this, though.
Yeah, and when we start talking about Amelia Perez, I will dive into that a little bit more. But I do think she would be the next one that they would choose. So there you have it. Will and I both are going to stick with Ariana Grande as our pick for that one and who we both want. So let's go to cinematography. Now, Will, I'm just going to tell you right now. Well, actually, let me read the nominees. Let's do it the right way. Nominees are The Brutalist, Lowell Crawley, Greg Fraser for Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez and Paul Gulholm, Ed Lockman for Maria, and Jaron Blaschke for Nosferatu. I just want to go on record to say The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, and Nosferatu, all visually stunning movies. Like the final scene or one of the final scenes in Nosferatu is going to be sketched in my mind for all of eternity. It is
For sure.
I so much so, Will, that I think it's the reason they gave him the Jim Carrey mustache in the first place.
Oh man, yeah. No, I think that's my desire here is that Nosferatu wins. I think there's some shots in here that I can still see that are just going to live with me for a very long time. I'm thinking especially of when we first see the carriage pull up and there's no driver. And it gets there and the door opens. It's an invitation to Nicholas Hoult. It's a scary as hell invitation. But the way that this film is shot is just hands down my favorite of the year. And then, but what I think is going to win, what I think is going to happen is that Dune 2 is going to get an Oscar, and it's going to be here where they get it.
Interesting. Interesting. So, okay. One of the categories we're not doing, and I don't want you to allude to your director yet, but
Sure.
is the editor, right? And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it true that Brady Corbett does all his own editing? Is that true?
I'm fairly certain that's true.
Okay, so this is the way I could see it playing out. I think you're correct. It could be Dune Part 2 here. Brady gets his editor if they go a different route for the director. However, if my desire lands with the Brutalist, and it's just because, and I know there's controversy, and let me just go on record to state this. If you guys want to hear about all the controversy and all that stuff, listen to the big picture. I purposely don't listen to a lot of the episodes when we get to this time of year because I don't want to be swayed one way or the other. So it wasn't until I had solidified my top list and solidified my my own personal thoughts on how I thought the year went is then I went back and started listening to some older episodes of the big picture just because for affirmation, just want to know how they fit with me, right?
Yep.
So I know there's some controversy with artificial intelligence images and things of that nature and where that will play a part. However, the opening scene to The Brutalist is my favorite shot of the entire year. It is, maybe it had something to do with the IMAX experience, but just the way you're not quite sure what's going on, but you kind of have an idea. He's working its way through something, and it lends. It's. There's so many like parallels to the shot. It's like birth, right?
Yeah.
And being birthed into America and how you're going through the, kind of canals and all that stuff. And then you see this sideways image of the Statue of Liberty and the music. And just so for me, that whole movie was so stunningly visual to me, or visually stunning for me. I went with The Brutalist, but I could see how Dune Part 2 would be the one I think would be the next one. I don't think Nosferatu, unfortunately, has a shot here. So
you're probably right.
We'll see. Let's move on. Let's go to Best Screenplay. If I can find my cat or my
Yeah, original or adapted?
Let's go with adapted first.
Okay. All right. So
adapted. Oh, sorry. Do you have it? Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yep. So for adapted screenplay, I just went ahead and I'm gonna predict that The Nickel Boys wins. Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes, their adaptation of Colson Whitehead's novel. Colson Whitehead, famous African American author who's written, a half dozen books that are always up for the Pulitzer Prize. 3 or 4 of them I've started and not finished because I always get a little too overtaken by the intensity of his writing.
Sure.
And that's my desire as well. I think that the screenplay for this film was perfect, front to back. The way they incorporate some of the NASA going to the moon and exploring the moon, I just thought everything was perfect as far as the writing went.
So of the 5 candidates, Will, nominees, the one that I did not see is Sing Sing. So I want that just on the record. That's one of the movies that I did not get to. I think there was 2 films I did not get to in the year 2024 that I really wanted to. Sing Sing was one. The other being A Few Small Things, I think, with Cillian Murphy. I think, or maybe A Few Little Things or something like that. It was something on that. But everything else, I think I saw for the most part that I wanted to. Nickel Boys, look, I'm with you. I think that would be my desire to win. I just don't think it's going to win. My desire to win, those are based on books, obviously, for the whole category here. I need to read those. I didn't realize that was something until they was nominated, that it was a book. So I need to go back and do that. I think Conclave wins. I do. I just feel like that just feels like an Academy Award movie for me. And I don't think they're going to sneak in the Best Picture. But I feel like the Academy wants to give them, just feels like a movie to me. I'm just throwing darts here, but it feels like a movie that the Academy wants to give love to. They just don't know where else to do it. And this seems like the best place for it to go.
I can see that argument.
Isn't that weird? It's like, even though that should be the case, but they kind of have a behavior, don't they?
Sure. Yeah, and you know that's one of the things that you kind of run into. And I would run into as a voter is like you have all of these movies that you really liked from this year, and we probably won't ever see a movie again that wins 10 Oscars because what happens is we get all these films that are worthy of winning something. So you kind of split your votes up a little bit, right? So I think you might be right. If Conclave is going to win something, it might be here, though Ray Fiennes might deserve it.
Hey, Ray Fiennes is a Fiennes actor, so we'll see what happens there. Let's move on. Let's do the one right below it then. We've already did Best Adapted Screenplay. Will went with Nickel Boys. I went with Conclave. Will, give me... Well, here, I'll read off this is going to be Best Original Screenplay. Here are the nominations for that. Nominees are Anora, written by Sean Baker. The Brutalist, written by Brady Corbett and Mona Fastvoid. A Real Pain, written by Jesse Eisenberg. September 5th, which this is one that... Now, technically, is this a 2025 release date, September 5th?
Well, no. If it's in the awards, then technically it's a 2024 release. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but yeah, I don't think it came out for us to watch until 2025.
Okay, that's fair enough. So next year, if that ends up making my top 25 list, that will be wise. So don't send us any angry emails. And then finally, to finish up that is the substance for the Best Original Screenplay. Will, one question before we get to our picks.
Sure.
I listened to the big picture, and one thing they were talking about was this idea of writers versus like acting directors also writing the movie. And where it seems like we're at today. Seems like directors or people who are directing and also acting in a film are also pulling triple duty or double duty and also writing theirs. And it's just because the way they see it, it's just so much easier to write for the way you see it in your head rather than to try to adapt your style to someone else's writing or vice versa, have a writer try to adapt their writing towards your style. Where are you at with that? And is it, you think it's as big of a problem as maybe the big picture and some other shows have alluded to? To me, it makes more sense. It's seemingly, I kind of got the idea that maybe they wished it wasn't necessarily going this direction. What do you think?
Yeah. No, it's kind of strange, right? Because we wouldn't be complaining about this if it was a painting, right? The artist has full control over what gets put onto the canvas when they're a painter. And I feel like if you have a full vision of something, like Sean Baker is a really good example here because this is what he does. He writes, directs, and I mean he doesn't star in, but he writes and directs all his films. And you know, I think some have been better than others, but you always get a coherent picture of the story he wants to tell and the characters he wants to explore. And I think it can be beneficial when you have when you are able to put the whole picture onto the canvas for us. Now, stuff where it doesn't work is like if Denis Villeneuve had wanted to write, direct, and star in Dune Part 2, because that's too big. At that point, when you're doing Dune 2, you need to be you're a baseball manager more than you are a basketball coach, right? And I think I agree. I think it's Amanda who kind of is the most critical on the big picture about this. And I think she's right, but I think there's two different types of film. There's these types of films, like these five here, where I think it's okay that the writer and director are the same. But then there's the other films like Dune and, Twisters and bigger stuff where you need to have you're the manager, not the creator.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think what would happen is if those films were to fall flat, there would be finger pointing as to why, especially if, and I'm taking it more from the, I guess, the writer, director, actor, standpoint, where it's a lot easier for Jesse Eisenberg to direct and also be the co-lead in that movie or supporting actor in that movie versus, Denis Villeneuve trying to do that. It's too big. You're right. There's just too many moving pieces. And if he was also like, hey, stop, I need to get in frame now, it's impossible to do it and be taking on way too much. I'm sure someone out there can do it, but I think it would you would be more wasteful of a studio's money, a production company, because you would be. I
Mhm.
just think you wouldn't be as tuned in or as efficient as you should be because you're trying to be two places at once. So, um,
Right.
with all that word salad being said, Will, give me your pick for best original screenplay.
Okay. So here, um, I feel like The Brutalist is going to be the winner. Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold. I think that it's in it's incredibly tight until you get to the last 45 minutes, but then there's been a lot of complaints about that last part of the movie. But I don't think, for me, it's a failure of the writing, right? I think that everything is still coherent to me. And to be able to put this all together in a 3.5 hour experience like that, I just don't know how they wouldn't win here. But that being said, I really do feel like I love Sean Baker. I mean, Florida Project, I count as one of my top 10 films of all time. And I would love to see him win here. And if this is where he wins, that'd be great.
So I'm torn too because I'm torn between those two, but I also think there is a real case that can be made for a real pain. Um,
Yeah.
just because it's written by Jesse Eisenberg, right? And I think again, going by just previous behaviors, there are these middle importance categories. And I
Hmm.
say that with all respect to writers and things of that nature, but I just mean the way it's billed on the show, right? I think there is sometimes they like to sneak in these underdogs
Yeah.
and give them these types of things. So, like I talked about Conclave and the other one, this could be the one where maybe I'm wrong on Conclave, but they went the Jesse Eisenberg route for a real pain. Um, by no means, though, is he, in my opinion, great writing, great movie, not on the same level as The Brutalist or Anora. Um,
Sure.
I'm actually going to go Anora. I think Sean Baker is the one I want and the one I think will win. Um, just because you alluded to that last 45 minutes of The Brutalist, it does feel like a completely different movie in some sense than what the
Yeah.
first, before intermission was going for. Um,
Yeah.
with that being said, I still love the movie, but like it does feel like that to me. I think Anora, you can make the claim, is a more complete piece of writing
Yeah.
from the beginning to the end.
No, that's a great point.
So let's move on. Let's go to supporting actor in a lead role, or best supporting actor. I mean, I'm gonna butcher this. Will Yura Borisov?
No, you got that. Sounds good to me.
Okay, Yura Borisov from Anora, Kiera Culkin from A Real Pain, Edward Norton from A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce from The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong from The Apprentice. Um,
Yeah.
I think this one is the one that I think is the easiest. You tell me what you think.
Well, that's interesting because I had a really hard time with this one. I'm torn
Really?
between two guys. Yeah, I'm torn between two guys. Who I want to win is Guy Pearce. Without his performance in The Brutalist, it's that movie doesn't work if we don't absolutely despise Guy Pearce. And boy, does he do a good job in that film of making us dislike him. And then the guy who I think is going to win is Edward Norton. Um, I watched A Complete Unknown today and was just blown away by his performance, his ability to make you feel things in small moments and make you feel like uh, there's good human beings on the planet. It was just astounding. So I feel like he's going to win.
So that's so interesting you say that. They're obviously all nominated, so there's a reason for them to be in
Sure.
here, right? They all have a strong reason for them or case for them to be in here. Specifically, you're right, Guy Pearce, dude. He is there. The way the movie's shot, the way the writing is done, the way they wait and just kind of hold off on the reason why, because you're kind of watching this movie and you're thinking yourself, you kind of feel uncomfortable around this
Mm,
guy, but he's being so damn nice and helpful. But like his demeanor, the way he communicates, there's just something off and it
yeah.
makes you uncomfortable as a viewer watching it. You're
Mhm.
right. It's completely great until he does eventually show his hand and you're like, oh, thank God, I needed to release here. I needed to hate this guy, and now you've told me that I can. It feels so
Yeah.
much better. Edward Norton, it's so subtle, so many small things. I feel like this particular this character in this movie would have been overlooked in maybe underwhelming by 95% of other actors. But
Yeah.
because you got an Edward Norton, he knows how to like not overdo the corny, but like
Hmm.
really make it feel he's just a
Genuine.
genuine, sincere guy who
Yeah.
you don't believe is putting this on. He just genuinely wants to do right by this guy and by
Mhm.
everyone. Um, and that in its own right is like an unbelievable performance. I personally, this is one category. Well, I don't have a desire. I don't
Mm.
because I really like them all. But I do think Kieran Culkin's going to win it. I just think he's kind of the flash in the pan right now. People really like him. They're going to put a
Yeah.
mic in front of him to see what the hell he'll say now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I do think, I just think as far as prediction goes, I think Kieran Culkin wins. But I really, if I had to rank this, I think Jeremy Strong is in last. I would go him, then Yura, then probably Edward Norton, then Guy, and then Kieran. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've got 3 left. Well, we got 4 technically, but we got 3 left.
Sure.
We got lead, and director.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the best actor in a lead this year. And the categories are Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan, yes, that guy from Gossip Girl, for The Apprentice. He played some president. I'm not sure who he is, but
I haven't
ladies
seen
and
it.
gentlemen, those are your 5. Question: have you seen The Apprentice?
No.
Me neither.
Never will.
Never will either. And I also want to say, is it fair for me to say that this feels a little contrived without seeing the movie?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think the last 8 to 9 years have all felt a little contrived when you're trying to think about him like critically, because when you think of something critically, it's not just you're trying to take something down, you're trying to understand something. So what you do when you do an analysis on something is you're not just putting negatives on it to be negative. You're trying to pull away the things that aren't that thing to make sense of the thing.
Yeah.
And with Donald Trump, I know what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't need all this other stuff. I already know what it is. I knew what it was in 2015 when I stopped voting Republican, and I know what it is now. So I don't need The Apprentice in my life. So Sebastian Stan, I'm sure you are great, but I'm good.
To me, as far as like, I'll take it from an even bigger umbrella approach, right? Not the specific nature of Donald Trump, the person, but like
Sure.
more about, I just, we've had this discussion, maybe not on camera, but maybe there's a reason he's elected. And we were kind of, afterwards we called each other the next day and we had a big long conversation about it. And pulling myself back, I do think right here, this is the thing right here. In maybe a small part of like what the lefts do, the liberals do, that upset the right and create a manifestation of a Donald Trump. And what I mean is that I'm not sure Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan are deserving of this award. Without seeing the movie, it might not be fair of me to say, but it feels contrived and it feels forced and it feels like somebody else might have been more deserving of this 5th spot. And because they go ahead and they do their own agenda there, that's kind of the thing that sits with me where it's like, hey guys, listen, we've done this. It's not worked out. Let's not do this game no more. Let's just do the thing right here. Let's not overcorrect. Like, what is it to benefit from this? You know what I mean? So I say that not seeing the movie. So those that have seen it, if you guys can make a strong case for why we're wrong, let us know. With that being said, Will, I named him off, actor in a lead role. Tell me who you went with and why, and who your desire pick is as well.
Yeah, so my desire and my prediction are the same here. I think Adrian Brody's performance in this film is the standout performance of the year. It might even like be the best of the last 4 to 5 years. I loved him in this movie. One of those guys that like feel he was born for this role, right? It just felt like it was a perfect marriage of actor and role, and just outstanding performance. So for me, it was Adrian Brody.
Same. I think it's going to be him, and it's also my desire. There's something about Adrian Brody. I got to tell you what this movie did for me. It reminded me that he's a heavy hitter,
Mm.
right? Because he kind of does this thing where, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just not following his catalog too closely, but it feels like he makes a movie, he gives an incredible performance, and then he
Hmm.
disappears for quite a while. Um, and maybe he's a little bit more, almost to the point, Will, where I have to admit, I kind of thought that maybe his best years were behind him because it didn't feel like he was in a lot of movies anymore. And I don't mean
Yeah,
like his ability to act. I mean like the the net casting net of casting, directors out there hiring him for a role. It felt like because let's be honest, does Adrian Brody really, outside of movie lovers, really bring anybody outside of the that niche to the box office to watch a movie? You know what I mean? Like he's
sure.
not a big draw by any means, but damn it, when you get Adrian Brody and you get him in a lead, you can almost at this point you can guarantee that you're going to be left with something amazing because I think his track record has shown that now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be fair, there's some because you're not a guy that hunts out bad action films. You haven't seen Adrian Brody in the last few years, but I know there's been a couple along the way where you see him holding the gun on the
Oh
cover, right?
God.
So he's been acting, and he showed up in Succession, had a pretty minor role but pretty important role. And yeah, he's just one of those guys I think that you dial up when you need to stun somebody with something, and that's
Okay.
what they did here. Yeah,
Well, I'm saddened to learn that our boy Adrian Brody is out there making straight to DVD movies, but sounds like hey, Bruce Willis started doing that towards the end of his career too, right?
yep,
Samuel L. Jackson, all our heroes end up doing shit that we don't understand, but it happens. So, but
yep,
I do think I think with this performance too, Will, just to kind of wrap up Adrian Brody,
yeah,
I think he put himself in another stratosphere, meaning like whatever those tiers are, I don't think he's up there with necessarily. It's almost not fair to say, but like, when you think of the best actors of all time, you think of oh my god, his name is uh right.
Marlon Brando,
I haven't seen enough Brando to know that, but they do talk about Brando being that. I mean, the guy that just
De
retired and
Niro,
he's say it
Pacino,
again.
Pacino, De Niro.
No, even better than those two. Like a
Oh,
better actor.
geez, Daniel Day Lewis.
Daniel Day Lewis, thank you. Like, I
Yeah,
think it's pretty common that people think of him as like the standard. They might have others on that tier, but like he's definitely, I don't think anybody's arguing he's not in that tier. I think Adrian Brody got himself a little closer to
sure.
those best capable actors with this performance. So good for him. All right. I think this is the toughest category to choose. Maybe I'm wrong. You tell me what you think. Actress in a leading role. Nominees are Cynthia Erivo, Wicked, Amelia Perez with Carla Sofia Gascon, Mikey Madison for Honora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. Would you agree this is the toughest one to choose?
Yes, definitely.
Make your case for who you want and who you think is going to happen.
Yeah, so there are three performances here that I think are deserving. There's a fourth performance that didn't get nominated that I think should actually win.
Okay.
And I can talk about that when we get to the film.
Okay.
But I think Mikey Madison and Honora, Demi Moore in The Substance, and Fernanda Torres all deserve to win this. So if one of those three wins, then I'm game. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. I really do feel like they're all deserving. So for the one that I think is, oh,
Let me stop you real quick. I
sure,
only want to just because I want to ask this because I'm in the same boat. I did want to ask this though. If Cynthia Erivo was to win,
hmm
Would it upset you that much?
Well, no, it's not going to upset me, right?
Well, there
Because
are some that upset me where I'm like, that is
sure,
so not on the same level. I really enjoyed her performance. Like,
yeah, I,
so with that being said, I don't think she did as good as necessarily the other three because of the nature of those movies,
mhm.
right? But with that being said, I just wanted you to kind of make a case real quick. I just want to show some love to Cynthia Erivo.
Sure. Yeah, and the reason why I'm a little held back on that is because I think that this her performance comes down to her
The,
performance, right? It's
yeah.
it's the moments when she's singing that, Defying Gravity. Every time that song is on in the car with my kids and my wife, because they're the ones that control the radio, not me. Um, I you shed a tear every single time that song's on because it's so powerful,
Yep.
and her performance of it is astounding, right? But from front to back, I still think there's gaps between her as an actress and her as a performer, and what these other three actresses are doing, right? And for me, the best actress from this year is probably Fernanda Torres. I'm Still Here was just a devastating movie, but her eyes in this film, when you're watching her see the horrors unfold, it just took you out of the fact that I saw this in the theater and was just like forgot I was in the theater in a number of scenes because of how amazing she was.
Yeah, I mean, I can't knock it. I agree with everything you're saying. A lot of times, and I've had this conversation too with you guys about where I'm at with this, where I'm at with uh, my actors and actresses today. Compared to, let's say, 20 years ago. And a lot of it could be like old man, get off my lawn type thing, right? Where what I mean by that is like, oh, well, they don't do it as good as my generation did it, right?
Hmm.
And I say that, and she's older than me, so I'm not really making any sense with my argument. But my point is like, with today's young batch of Hollywood actors and actresses, Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Timothy Chalamet, I got those three on top of my head because I finished up Dune Part 2 over the weekend. Um, they're very good. They're
Hmm.
very, very good, and they're already picking the right choices. And I think I'm more in love with the choices of movies in which they're attempting to make than I
Yeah.
ultimately am with their performances at the end of the day. Like, I like all of them. I just not sure I'm at the point where I love all of them yet.
Yeah.
In this case, Fernanda Torres, she's doing the thing that I normally, okay, I'll give you an example. Fernando Torres in this movie is very tight controlled, holding it in, and has to because
Hmm.
she's the now patriarch of this family, right? And
Yeah.
she is trying to keep it all together. And the whole title, "I'm Still Here," is like reminding everyone, like, hey, I have to be, like it's a very I have to be present movie. Where Mikey Madison in this case, she has the similar performance to me where she's like very not necessarily tight and controlled, but like at the end of the movie we're supposed to get this big release, and I think she does a very good job. I think it could have been done maybe a little bit better, where in this case with Fernanda Torres, I think that big release didn't need to be over dramatic. I think it
Hmm.
needed to be what it was. And
Okay.
therefore, I might be a hypocrite for it. With all that being said, I think Demi Moore actually wins, and I
Hmm.
want her to win. She's up there in age. I don't know that she'll have another opportunity like this, but I think this was her best performance of her career. I really
Hmm.
do. I thought, dude, there was an unhinged just about her that I've never seen before, that I
Yeah.
wasn't sure that she was going to go to. But without her doing it, I don't think that movie works the way it does.
Right. Yeah. The scene where she's looking in the mirror when she's trying to decide to go to the date, man, just devastating stuff. Um,
Devastating. And for a
so
movie that normally, like a type of movie that wouldn't normally get Oscar nomination love. You know what I
right.
mean? So, like, to get that type of, not only just get the best picture candidate, but to get best performance or best actress nominee, that says something too to how powerful her performance was. So you
Yeah.
went with Fernanda Torres, though, is that correct?
Yes.
And I went with Demi Moore. So we'll see what happens. We're kind of we've got similar thoughts, but we're going left and one's going right. Um, Let's go best director.
All right.
Best director. The nominations or the nominees for best director go to Sean Baker, which is one of Will's favorites for the movie Anora, Brady Corbert for The Brutalist, James Mangold for A Complete Unknown, Jacques Adourd for Amelia Perez, and Coralie Fargat for The Substance. So,
Yeah.
or Fargay maybe. Where you at, Will?
Yeah, so Desire is probably pretty clear here. I would love if Sean Baker got a win. Just our best indie does it on his own director who tells stories about people who don't ever get stories told about them. And I just really appreciate what he does. But my prediction here is might surprise you a little bit. I'm not sure, but I watched A Complete Unknown today and
Uh-oh.
was
Recency
shocked.
bias alert. Recency
No,
bias
no, no.
alert.
I was shocked by how well this was directed and how well it flowed from one era to the next. And like maybe you found yourself asking a question like, hey, did they just go forward a whole year? But then you found out within 10 seconds that they went forward a whole year and it all stayed together and was tight and continuous. And I was just kind of shocked at how well this flowed. And I'm not a music biopic guy at all.
Yeah, I know
So
you're not.
yeah, so really, I think James Mangold might pull off a little bit of an upset here.
That would be interesting because I think it would be the only. I think it's the only category where if A Complete Unknown is going to win something, I think it's could be this category. Now, I don't think he's going to, and I would actually rank him probably at third or fourth on my list personally.
Mhm.
But I think if I had to see, if I go through them all, like I just don't. I think it's too early for Chalamet. You know what I mean? And I just
Sure.
I don't. And Brody's performance was just so much better, right? And I think the
Mhm.
thing going against Chalamet is Chalamet was unbelievable in this movie. There's no reason you don't. He was Bob Dylan, right? Like I said,
Yeah.
this wasn't a Timothy Chalamet problem. This was a Bob Dylan problem. He's kind of boring and he's kind of a prick. And because he's both those things,
Yeah.
the movie itself kind of gets a little hurt because it's him that you're following. I'm a little interested in what is the girl's name? Is it Rita? Who's going to be playing Madonna from Ozarks? Um,
Oh, okay.
uh,
I can't remember the name.
I'm interested in that one because I think she'll bring a level of that, and there's a little more energy to Madonna. But so you're going with James Mangold then? If you had to give a second fiddle to who would it go to?
Brady Corbet.
Okay.
For the Brutalist, yeah.
That's where I'm at. I think Brady Corbet will win it, and I actually my desire is to go there too. I just think ultimately that movie. How many nominations did it end up getting?
Less than Amelia Perez.
Which is crazy, but I think ultimately it will walk away with more awards than Amelia Perez will. So
Better.
yeah, I better. You're right. That's it for Oscars awards for this year for between Will and myself. Let's move on to 24 movies, man. I'm excited to get to this part. So,
Yeah.
Will, the 10 best pictures that the nomination or for the Oscars this year goes as such. All right. And for those of you following along, you can get your list out as well. We're going to transition to our Oscars top 10. And we're going to let you know which of those movies are not in our top 10 list before we reveal. So, Best Picture nominees go as such: Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. With that being said, Will, there's 10 movies there. How many movies of those 10 did not make your top 10, and which ones are they?
Okay, so I have 6 films that did not make my top 10.
6. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
6.
Interesting.
So
Remember, you saw twice as much as me this year, so okay.
Yeah. Yep. So I'll do them in reverse order. So I went and looked before we got on here to see what position I had them into on my
Okay.
low ranked list. The bottom of the 6 is Amelia Perez. That was the
Okay.
59th best movie I saw this year.
Out of, you said 83?
87. Yeah. So
87.
it's not the worst movie I saw this year, but also, in the bottom half. Conclave I have at 26. Wicked I have at the 19th best movie. A Complete Unknown at 18th. The Substance at 17th. And I'm Still Here at 16th.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We are going to have an interesting top 10.
All right. I'm excited.
I got to admit right off the get, I'm a little surprised that Conclave was 21 for you. I just kind of predicted that one, a little different one for you. It is or I'm sorry, it was 23rd or something for you. It's my 21st movie.
Mm,
So Conclave did not make my top 10. I
okay.
have not officially ranked Emilia Perez yet, mainly because I want to talk about it. And I'm
Okay.
not sure that there's a better time to talk about that movie than maybe right now,
Okay.
because it's not going to come back up. I agree, it's not going to make my top 10. That much I know is cemented in. I want to say something. The movie has so many things that piss me off.
Mm,
All right. First thing being, didn't need to be a musical. All right. Musical, if you're going to add a musical element to it, it needs to enhance the film some way, somehow. The musical
yeah.
numbers either need to be catchy and fun, or they need
Hmm.
to be like dramatically enhancing and emotionally enticing and all these things that like pull at your heartstrings or something, right? It needs to do something to your emotions, whatever it might be. The musical numbers neither did that at all. As a matter of fact, there was one musical number in the entire film that actually did that to me, and it was when the kid was singing to Emilia Perez and calling her Papa.
Mm, yep.
That to me was the best part of the movie. I was like,
Okay.
holy, okay, this gets here. I just want to ask a couple questions. The
Sure.
movie itself, overall, it doesn't lack intensity or drama, right?
Sure.
So, from a movie standpoint, it's actually really intriguing and it keeps you intrigued to the very end to see how it's going to play out, right?
Sure. Yep.
So, there's a lot of things about that. Is it fair to say that the biggest issues we have with this is sort of this humanizing of a drug cartel leader who, although with his actions in the second half of the movie, is trying to showcase his remorse,
Sure.
but ultimately has never really expressed that verbally to the lengths that we need him to, even though he's committed murder and you might not ever come back. But like, we're talking about just a character here, and those people exist, and maybe there are murderers out there who are like, I fucked up my life. I was whatever, and I want to atone for it, and this is the only way I know how, but I know I'm not worthy of all these things. But with that needs to become like a complete and utter level of selflessness the entire rest of the way. And the
Yep.
issue with this movie is it feels like the movie wants me rooting for Emilia Perez.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, they are pretty much outside of maybe a scene or two. Damn, even with their actions of where they're trying to do good, the whole thing is manipulation.
Sure.
So, is that the issue with this movie outside of like the whole where does the issue with the trans environment come in at?
Mm. For me, it's the gendering of violence, right? It's the first half of the movie. It's positioning the male Amelia. I can't remember her name when she. Yeah.
Manitez.
Okay. So when Benitez is, Benitez, we're getting all the violent nature of that person, right? Of Amelia, who wants to be Amelia Perez. And then when they become a female, all of a sudden there's this um, almost like altruistic nature to her,
Yes.
and there's a gendering of violence, and I don't think the director understands this is one of the biggest issues I have with it. If the
Okay.
director understood that he was being specific about violence is male and nonviolence is female, I might be able to kind of understand that argument, right? But I don't think he understands it. I don't think that's what he's trying to say. I think what he's trying to say is like, this person is a better person now that she's fully realized. And sure, but then you're overlooking all of these atrocities that she's committed in her life, because when you transition, you still have your past. It doesn't go away.
And you still
So
have your
that's
humanistic nature to you. Those that
Right.
anger that put you in that position still fucking exists, right?
Yeah.
It
And
still
then
exists.
all that being said, and the point that you made is the point that really gets me is the manipulation. She's not a good person. She's
Right.
still trying to have her kids in a house without telling them the truth. She's trying to manipulate how Selena Gomez's character is, living her life and trying to control all of that the whole time. So it's not, and I don't think the director understands. I think he's trying. I think he thinks this is one movie and it's not.
So the only thing I would say with the gender part of it that you were talking about, because I totally agree. The way that you've laid that out, I thought was eloquently perfect. Like I totally understand it. The only thing I would say that made me kind of feel like I got what he was trying to do in the
Mhm.
sense of like, is like you were born again in his eyes, in Amelia Perez, or in her eyes, right? So Amelia Perez feels reborn again. And so she's got a clean slate until she doesn't. Um, and so it might feel like all of her human tendencies have gone to the wayside. And it's not until Selena Gomez's character comes in and says she's engaged where Amelia Perez really loses it and becomes Manitez or whatever, just the person. Like, let's not label it with a name.
Yep.
Becomes that vessel, right? And that vessel is innately built to be destructive.
Mhm.
And because of that, I kind of understood it a little bit more and was like, okay, he's no longer reborn again. It can no longer play it cool or like have the discipline of being perfect. So I give it a little bit more of a pass than maybe you do. But like listening to what you're saying, I do remember at times being like, that would have been more impactful if they would have verbalized more of those frustrations when Amelia Perez was Amelia Perez. Like, I
Right.
get these tendencies when he's talking to Rita, Zoe Saldana's character.
Mhm.
When she is, I mean, and if Amelia Perez is like, I get these tendencies where I want to, and these things, and it just, I have to keep them at bay because I forget, the mission or what I'm doing, whatever. But like, we don't get any of that. We don't get any of that human things that I think where you're right. I think the director thinks that they've accomplished already at this point in the movie, and we're supposed to feel that with her, and
Yeah.
we just aren't. So,
Right. No.
okay.
100%.
Okay. I just had to talk that out, just seen it, and I was like, you know what? We're never going to get there. It's never going to show up on Cinema 100, so let's have it now if we can.
Sure.
Okay. That's our list of movies so mine for Will, my ones that did not make it personally. Conclave was 21 for me. A Complete Unknown was 12 for me. Amelia Perez, I do not have ranked, but is not on the list. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do have 6 of them on there, so I'm missing one, but I can't find out which one. Or I have 7 of them on there. 7 of them made it for me. I was
Oh man.
shocked. I was shocked because that's a complete opposite of last year for me. So,
I'm just glad to hear that there's one movie that's on your list. You don't have to talk about it
yeah,
now, but
you're shocked, aren't you?
I am a little bit, yeah.
Let's find out where they are here in just mere minutes. Will, tell me your biggest surprise this year and why.
Yeah, so I was kind of torn here. I'm gonna cheat like I always do and give you two. Smile 2, horror film. First one's very good. I thought it was tight. I did a really good job of telling the story. This one goes to a whole nother level, and I was just shocked at the genius of Smile 2 is that the director puts it in Naomi Scott's pop star vessel, and the the anxieties of being a pop star and the anxieties of this, the demon that's haunting her, it just perfectly play together. And I was shocked by how tense this movie was and anxiety ridden, and not in my top 10, but almost there. And then the other one was Night Bitch, Amy Adams film about motherhood. Just laying it all out there, man. Just telling the truth about how we feel, I think, is important, and it's okay to feel the shitty things, the hard things. But we got to talk about them, right? And I think that's what that movie's trying to do. And it's not perfect, but I was really impressed by it.
Is that the one that was your number 4 on best actresses list?
No, nope,
Okay. Hold it. We'll get there.
nope.
We'll get there. So I haven't seen either one of those, and I'm kind of learning something about you that maybe I'm wrong on. Maybe you always
Okay.
have been. I just didn't realize it. Is it fair to say that you have maybe a greater infatuation with horror genre than I thought you previously had, or you just find yourself watching more of those recently?
Um, it's definitely grown. So two movies happened that has just launched me into horror a lot more than I used to be. The first was The Witch, a Robert Eggers
Robert
film.
Eggers. Yep.
Yep. I love that movie because you know, it's not just about the gore. Like I'm not a gore guy. I'm more of like the psychological thriller type that kind of uses horror as a vessel. So The Witch kind of turned me on to like the elevated horror, quote unquote, that people have been talking about the last few years. And then Hereditary. I
Okay.
think Hereditary, top five movie for me all time. I love that movie so much. And it says more when a horror uses horror to tell a bigger story about how we feel as humans and about grief. Any of those things, it just really works for me. So,
Parasite. Would you put that in the horror genre? Is that a drama? Is that mixture? It's up there.
man,
It could
that's
be. You
the
could make an argument.
yeah. Parasite's Ronnie Radke. Um, it
it's
does
his own.
everything, man.
It's his
It's
own
it's
thing.
hilarious. When it flips that switch and goes into horror, it really does it well. But then it's a drama through and through. It's a family drama,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah. Bring the family to that one. My biggest surprise of the year is I got to be honest with you. Maybe the most fun I had at the movie theater this year, as far as like a complete ride.
hmm,
Bad Boys Ride or Die.
okay.
I was just, dude, I didn't have much expectations for it. I was just like, because I got to be honest with you, I didn't see the third Bad Boys. I saw the
Oh,
first
okay.
two and I saw the fourth one. And I kind of was like, I just went in, was like, you know what? I want to see Will Smith in something kind of post the slap. I want to kind of feel good about it. I just didn't know where we were at with Martin Lawrence because he's a little bit like he's had some health issues, and you
Yeah,
know, I hate to say it, but a lot of times physical body transformations in the comedy world, they kind of impact your comedy.
sure.
Sometimes it's beneficial that you're heavier, but if a heavier guy went skinnier, it's the way you
Mhm.
see these characters in your mind.
Yeah,
And when they're a little bit different, I'll give you another example. Like when Chris Tucker was in the last Rush Hour, looks a little bit different. So it kind of messes with your idea of who he is because he kind of fits that sleeky, slender, kind of squealy person in Rush Hour, right? Now he's
sure.
a little
Yep.
heavier, so it kind of messes with that comedy a little bit. Maybe I'm alone on that boat. Does you ever feel anything like that when it comes to comedy or when body transformations?
Uh, it would be harder to tell fat jokes if you weren't fat,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, I think you're right there, where you do have to kind of tell jokes that you understand in order for them to hit. Like, I think it's okay to laugh at a Jewish person telling jokes about being Jewish.
Sure.
Not so much if it's a guy who might lean a little right, telling jokes about Jews. So,
I think even then it's okay as long as that guy that leans a little right is telling jokes about people that lean right. Like, he's how
sure,
aware is that
yeah.
person? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose you have a point there, but yeah, I think you have to actually embody your comedy in order to really understand it. So
No, that's fair. Like Jonah Hill says in Funny People, there's nothing funny about a physically fit man. Uh,
yeah,
we move on. Will, give me your biggest disappointment, and I'm curious if it matches up.
okay, no, I don't. Maybe I don't know. So my biggest disappointment, just to preface this, is still a 4-star movie, but
Okay.
it comes on the tail of another movie that I kind of put it close to my top 10, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
Okay.
I just my expectations for this were out of this world, and it just didn't hit the same way the first one did in the reboots here. So I was ended up being a little disappointed by this one.
Yeah, and a lot of it could be where we're at right now with special effects,
Yep,
and how things feel rushed to get to print, and just they need more time. And it felt like
yep,
the first one got the time that it needed, right? So I think
yep,
that's kind of where I was at when I saw the trailer. I remember I said something to you. I was like, "This feels off." Something just felt hokey about it a little bit to me.
yeah,
I have not seen it. I will watch it because I loved Mad Max, the original.
Still good.
Still good. I'll definitely watch it, especially for the story. Um, I I thought you were going to go the same route as me. And
Mm,
the only reason I was a defender. It kind of goes against what I originally said in the middle of this podcast, but
okay.
I was a defender of the idea of Joker Part 2 going musical because I trusted Todd Phillips. I trusted Joaquin Phoenix to push back against something that might have been a bad idea.
Mm,
Um, and I just wanted it to work. And you talk about something that really didn't escalate that movie. It didn't. I would dare say the musical numbers were a little more interesting than musical numbers that Emilio Perez gave us. But like, I can't remember anything of meaning that came from that movie. It just was nothing like its predecessor. And it really, in my eyes, missed out on a huge opportunity of a franchise. Maybe they didn't want a franchise. I don't know, just a long-term storytelling in the world of like Todd Phillips and what that would have looked like with other characters, you know?
yeah.
And I just feel like they heard it. They were going to need something completely special for a third act of this if they were going to try to bring it back. And I just don't think you can. I think they killed it.
Yeah. I didn't even watch it, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I just knew once I started reading about the musical and just seeing people that I like opinion say it's not very good. I just knew it wasn't going to be for me.
Interesting. I can't believe of the 80, even your curiosity wasn't. Now, you loved the first one, though, right?
I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Liked it a lot. I remember you saying that. Okay, liked it a lot. Okay, we move on. Let's get rolling here. Let's talk about our first three out. You don't have to be as detailed, but just tell
Sure.
me your 11 through 13, Will.
Yeah. So 13 is Twisters. I had it in my top 10 for a long time this year. But
Really?
yeah, yeah. It's really been the last couple weeks where I punched through all the movies I thought might make my top 10. And it got bounced out. I love Glenn Powell. I think he is all he is. Everyone's he's a big deal because he's a big deal, right? I agree with it. Smile 2 is my number 12. Again, just thought this was the perfect overlay. Putting it as a pop, the possessed person as a pop star was perfect. And then my number 11, I really wanted to get this in to my top 10, but I couldn't. It was Rebel Ridge. It was a Netflix movie from earlier
Yep.
this year. The perfect example of a film that does not give you more information than you need and makes you work a little bit for how to watch the film. It just makes you pay attention. And it was kind of it's the anti Netflix movie. Because
Which is
most Netflix movies you can kind of half pay attention to and eventually understand what's going on. This one, if you weren't paying attention and
you missed
looking
it.
for the details, yeah, you're missing it. So those are my
I
three.
like that. I like that. I have not got to that one. I'll have to check that out. So my 13 through or 11 through 13 here, I'll admit that one of them. It's so funny because like as movies, like as I get more time distant between the time I watched it, I can either convince myself to go up or down depending on like its lasting thoughts on mine. For example, I gave a half tick up for Wicked, mainly because I listened to Defying Gravity probably more times than I should have. I would, and then I went a half tick down on one of these movies, and that ended up being Challengers. So
Hmm.
Challengers was my number 13 movie. I had it at number 10 for a long time. I really liked it. Love the score. I love the way they set up kind of the intrigue between the three characters. Ultimately, it's too long and it kind of starts getting a little redundant towards the end where it's
Mhm.
like make a choice. But I really respected what it was trying to be early on. It just didn't quite get there for me. Number
Yeah.
12, A Complete Unknown. It's more a Bob Dylan problem for me. The movie's done great. I just
Yeah.
found it kind of boring at times because you want something to happen and it's like, well, wait a minute, this is Bob Dylan we're talking about, you know? Like this
Sure.
is a guy that's known for not doing anything, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of his thing. But as far as like all elements of that movie, I think is really good. Number 11, this movie was in my top 10 up until I seen Dune Part 2. So you can blame your movie here for this one not getting in. I really like this movie, and this is a movie that normally makes my top 10, and that's We Live in Time with Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh.
Yeah.
The storytelling here is it's a little cliched with the accidents, and it's just a story that's told a lot in these kind of romantic dramas, these melodramedies. But
Yeah.
it's also a story of life, Will, and it happens.
Yeah.
And it's how
Yep.
you embrace those characters that are taking you along for the ride. And right now, Andrew Garfield is really good at doing that for me. You talk about a guy that is just my original idea of him and what he's become are just nowhere near each other. So those are my three.
Yeah. Good ones. Challengers was close for me. Those three people suck, man. They just suck. The movie was good, but those three people suck. And it made it hard to like the film. And also, listen, Luca, you can't throw in a knee injury at people like that. You just can't out of nowhere. Zendaya, when they zoom in on that, man, I almost turned the movie off.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're wondering what they're gonna do, and then that happens. Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna get to our top 10 now. I know everybody's been wondering and waiting, and this is what it is. Our top 10 movies of the year 2024. Sounds like Will's list is gonna be a little bit more like what my list was last year, filled with not Oscar nominated films. Where this year my list is and his list is not. With that being said, if Will and I we're gonna kind of take a little liberties with this game a little bit. I will reveal a number, or he'll reveal his number 10. And if it's like my 8 or my 7, we'll talk about the movie in totality right then and there. If it's something that I want to pause because it might be higher up on my list, I'll say, hold that thought. It's a little higher up for me, and we'll talk to it when it gets to my reveal. So, Will, with all that being said, time is upon us. Give me your number 10 movie for the year 2024.
Robert, it's a tie. I'll be quick. I couldn't pick between Inside Out 2 and Flow. I just couldn't. I wanted to have an animated movie represented, and I felt like I just couldn't pick. Inside Out 2, I think everyone's probably super familiar with. Really good story about coming of age and, kind of not knowing where you fit in, right? I think most of us have gone through that. And God, the anxiety scene at the motherboard is just perfect, right? So I had to make sure that got mentioned. And then Flow, the movie that is a silent film about a cat, right? This did something to me. We watched this all together down in the basement, right? We rented it a few weeks back, and just found family films, right, where you don't necessarily know where you belong, and you find your family along the way. This one got me pretty good. So I just wanted to make sure I talked about both of those briefly. So those are my combined top 10.
Okay. I've not seen Flow. I've heard a lot about its kind of more recent push of people thinking it's going to overtake possibly Inside Out 2.
Yeah.
With that being said, the only big animation I saw this year was The Wild Robot.
Okay.
Kind of similar themes of like, finding your family, and, then there's the whole artificial intelligence and whether or not they can love and all that.
Sure.
I really enjoyed that movie. I thought that it was a little longer than maybe I wanted it to be. It kind of got a little tedious and boring in the middle there, but it ultimately gets you in the end, and it's the same kind of end. I love the score and the soundtrack. So I enjoyed Wild Robot. Is there a reason that one was a little lower on your list than the other two?
I just think the other two films are more complete, and Wild Robot 2 gets a little choppy. It's in that the second act that it just feels a little broken and a little tedious. And I think I still had it as a 4-star film, so I really liked it, but just not quite top 10 material for me.
Fair enough, buddy. Fair enough. My number 10 is a movie that I just want to say this. I sometimes can sound like a hater of the horror genre. I'm not, if it's done right, because like you alluded to earlier, when horror's done right, it stands out. In this, some part of the reason I wanted to do Cinema 100 is because I took a film class in college, and one of the very first films they showed us was a movie called Nosferatu. Not done by Robert Eggers, then done by F.W. Murnau, but
Mhm.
impactful enough for a kid that doesn't normally care for horror genre to still be enthralled by what I'm seeing on my screen. In this case, it's done by Robert Eggers and played by Bill Skarsgård, who's the king of the horror genre, in my opinion. Right? Lily
Yeah.
Rose Depp is also in this. Johnny Depp's daughter. I thought its pacing was tremendous. I thought the visual images we saw was tremendous. I thought it a little funny at first. It is a little distracting that I forget the guy's name. Or I guess Nosferatu,
Bill
Doctor
Skarsgård.
Nosferatu. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård. Thank you. It looks like the villain from Sonic the Hedgehog, which is Jim Carrey's character, but
Sure.
I like the voice choices. I like, and then ultimately what I was telling you, Will, is like the visual image at the end of him in
Yeah.
Lily Rose Depp is just, it's something I'll never forget, and it stands out. And for me, it was number 10 of the year. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I've got this as my number 6.
okay.
And you know, for a, it's one of those films that I think the imagery is a little bit stronger than any sort of like part of the problem here is that I've listened to some of Robert Eggers like takes on his film, right? I've listened to some
Okay.
of the interviews and he's kind of a little bit more nonchalant about like, I just kind of like I write a film for the visuals and then like whatever you think it's about, you can go ahead and think that because that's not what it's about. And that kind of pisses me off a little bit, right? Because I do think a film can be visually stunning while also trying to be a bigger picture about what human beings are like. And I think there's some of that going on here, right? Like Nosferatu's about desire and how it can destroy us. And I think that was probably a theme that he was working with here. And I think he does a really good job with it. But I also wonder, because he's not thinking about those things, whether or not it can apply, um, whether or not it could be an all-time great film, because all-time great films are trying to understand human beings. And I don't know if he's trying to do that here. So, I mean, I still have it as my number 6 film, right? So I
So
like this a lot.
if,
Yeah.
if he gets out there and he's touting about it means this, right?
Mhm.
That would enhance, if you liked what he was ultimately going for, it would enhance that film for you, is what you're saying.
Yes, for sure.
Where he's kind of leaving it up to like the universe. It's like a song, make it what you want. You know, what I love about music is like Rob Thomas, 3 a.m., wrote that song about his mother who had cancer, but he also didn't want to utilize certain words because he didn't want the song to be so specific that it loses its universal, kind of, receptor to other people. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So there's a little bit of that, I guess, going on, but it doesn't sound like Robert Eggers really went that deep with it.
No, it's more like him saying this is a movie about a vampire, and it's about a woman who is being haunted by that vampire. That's as specific as he gets,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's good enough to like for
Sway
me,
you.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good enough. So, anyways,
Fair,
it's my number 6. I'm just minor complaints, I suppose.
fair enough. I will bounce on that. Or whatever he says. So, Will, you just gave your number 6 then. Your number 10 was Flow and Inside Out.
Yeah.
Why don't you? Well, I guess let me give my number 9 then. Since you've given
Okay.
2 movies already, let me just kind of keep pace with you. My number 9 is weird. It's weird because my initial reaction, this thing was as high as 6. After time has gone by, watching, like, coming down the stretch, watching, 6 or 7 movies here in the last, like, almost 6 or 7 days,
Yeah.
I could almost talk myself, this is the only one. It doesn't make any sense because it's number 9, right? So you would think my number 10 would be the one to bounce, but number 10 is locked. Nosferatu's not going anywhere. But I went with A Real Pain. And it's such a, I say it's a simple movie in the way the story's told, but it's not a simple story, right? By no means am I trying to claim that it's a simple story. And because the story is so deeply rooted into that culture, in what we've learned, and where we are now, and where we don't want to go again, and just all these things, it's like it's so funny how something that happened, 80, 90, 100 years ago
Yeah.
feels very relevant and modern in this movie. So
Hmm.
for that, I ultimately kept it in my top 10, but a lot of it felt like there's at times I feel like the story's been done so much
Mm.
um that maybe it's not as great as a movie as maybe some of these other ones I could have snuck in there, but I ultimately got there with it. I think both performances, Eisenberg plays it straight, so Kieran Culkin can do his thing. It's a really really brilliant movie, and I think Jesse Eisenberg should be proud of his debut movie there. So I went with number 9, A Real Pain.
Yeah. So, funny enough, this is my number 9 as well.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah. So I'm kind of right there with you. I think the thing that kind of why I'm okay with, you said, this story's been done a lot, and I agree with that. But I think it's more about that being kind of like the subtext
Okay.
of the film rather than the central point of the film. That is what brings these two guys back together, right? These two cousins. But the film is about Kieran Culkin's character and his almost like, I mean, his depression, right?
Yeah.
He's fast talking. He's always like, he's everything's good until it's not. And Jesse Eisenberg trying to figure out, is he okay, right? So that's the bigger picture of the film, and why I think I'm not as distracted by, the going back to one of the camps, right? And those scenes really work. They do a really good job with them. Very impressed by Eisenberg's filmmaking abilities in this film. But at the end of the day, why this film works is because it's not too specific about those past traumas. It's about the trauma that they're going through together right now. So I think it ends up being a really good film, and honestly I'm shocked it wasn't on the
Oh,
Oscars
the
top 10.
best picture. Yeah, I think
Yep.
it had to have been in the conversation. The last thing I'll say on this is like a couple things is like Kier Culkin, who I love. Secession, unbelievable, right? Great.
Yep.
The, there is a, if he's not, he's smart in real life. You can clearly
Oh yeah.
tell that, right? If he's not as smart as he is or as sharp of self awareness as he is, because he
Mm.
plays with that kind of obnoxious line. uh, he plays with it. And that's the
Yeah.
thing you love about him, but it also can be obnoxious to a point where it's distracting. And
Yeah.
I worried for him in this film early on a little bit where I was like, are we doing this where things kind of felt contrived, maybe just a tad?
Mm.
But then he'll
Yeah.
do something that makes it actually genuinely sweet. And you're like, okay, they balanced this character out so well that it made the movie work and you care for
Yeah.
his depression rather than feeling like he distracted from this overwhelming, powerful context that's around it, and you just didn't want that to be the case. And I also think that that's props to Jesse Eisenberg too. So,
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot to, and I've listened to some things with Eisenberg where he says I gave him very little notes, if any at all. So it's more about the brilliance of Kieran Culkin, and how he was able to portray the character. I was just a little worried about it. So.
Yeah. Well, I do think there are one of the things that kept this movie from being a little bit higher for me was I felt like that line that you're talking about was crossed a couple times
Yeah, I
where
agree.
it just got a little too obnoxious for me. But it comes back down, right?
Yep.
Everything, I think in the end it works out, but that line is it gets crossed one too many times for me.
And I think ultimately that's the thing that makes me go, it could be, because I gave it a 4. It was a 4 for me on my
Mm.
star rating. It could have been a little lower, but I ultimately gave it at 9. Will, give me your number 8, buddy.
All right. So my number 8, you left out of your top 10. Yeah, I think you had it at number 11. Is
Okay,
We Live in Time.
let's talk about it.
Bro, this movie just we watch it kind of, I don't know if it was subconsciously or not, but we watched it on Valentine's Day. Not big Valentine's Day people over here, but that's when we ended up watching it, right? And God, I have a quote here. I want to be remembered for more than just being somebody's dead mom. And man, is that not just one of the most human things that was said in film this year? We all have these desires and these dreams, and we all want to achieve those things, and then we start to get older and we start to run into other things in life. We start to have kids, and all of a sudden our dreams aren't the most important thing anymore. um, and it just this movie hit me really hard. And when you get to that last scene where they're all ice skating together, bro, this Florence Pugh is who I was talking about. I think she had the
Okay.
best performance of the year.
Um, I I get it. I get it. I have nothing to say negative against that. I guess I left there more from the Andrew Garfield side of things, but you're right.
Hmm.
She's phenomenal. It was just another reminder for me when it came to him of just his maturity through his last 20 years, right? I mean, because you had Toby Maguire and then you had Garfield as Spider-Man, right? And you're just like, they fit the I forget Spider-Man's actual name, but the Clark Kent. No, that's
Peter
Superman.
Parker.
Sorry. Thank you. He fits that to a bill, the lengthy, the nerdy type thing, right? But like then you kind of get cast typed into those big superhero things. I thought his coming out party was The Social Network.
Mm.
I really thought he did a damn good job in that movie to how outstanding Jesse Eisenberg is as Mark Zuckerberg that entire movie, almost to the point where like I will forever think Jesse Eisenberg is Mark Zuckerberg in some weird
Yep.
way, right? Um,
Yeah.
but it's from then it turned into that and TikTok or Tick Tick Boom and
Mm.
just some of these other movies that he's on. He was in that Hacksaw Ridge and just some of the movie choices he's made. I think have been more mature.
Silence.
What was it?
Silence.
Silence. Thank you. Oh my gosh, Silence. Silence is
Yeah.
phenomenal. Yes, I just think it's one of those things where like he's picking the right movies, but like he's somebody that 15, 20 years ago I would have told you would have just kind of blended into the background of scenes. Not
Yeah.
anymore. He's a lead man. Like he's
Sure.
earned every bit of that, and I really enjoyed this movie because even though, again, in that field we talk about cancer a lot, um,
Hmm.
but it's such a in your face part of everybody. Everybody knows somebody that has had cancer. Um,
Yeah.
and that's why the story's told so often. And you're right. Just hearing you say that gave me goosebumps, that line, that quote that you read. So, and I don't have kids, so I can't even imagine. But
Yeah.
okay. My number 8, Will, um, is I'm Still Here. I'm Still Here. This movie almost was my biggest surprise of the year
Mm.
because I just didn't know much about it. I kind of read the plot line a little bit going in, and I was, Fernanda was getting a lot of kind of like praise for her performance, and I was like, okay, let's see if this is just like Oscars giving an international type film, some love, and that's kind of what they do. It's so
Yeah.
much more than that. It's especially the way it's shot. Just early
Hmm.
on, the way they're telling the story of the family, and they're at the beach, then they're in the house. It's so funny. I felt like I was there. I knew the
Mm.
entire layout of of um of that probably 200 yards, 300 yards. I knew
Yeah.
exactly where they were at all times. I knew what room I was in. I knew all the kids, even though there were so many. You kind of would feel I knew exactly what kid was what kid, right? And I know that that's how it's supposed to be, but like I mean instantaneously. Um,
Yeah.
I just thought it had identity and I thought it had it right away. And that's before you get to Fernanda's performance. And even the
Hmm.
father, who plays the father, did you have his name down?
Oh, I don't have it on me. Let me
Well,
see if I can.
as you're
While you're
looking that
talking.
up, yeah, I'll just talk about how I felt like, you know, he loses screen time as the story unfolds, but like he's a powerful patriarch in that movie, and they have
Hmm.
great chemistry with each other right on, and it just felt so. I felt like I was a part of the culture. And then the actual story itself, as it unfolds, is just gut wrenchingly. It hits you so hard because I just can't imagine it. It's not necessarily something that was relatable, but it's
True.
something that you can be empathetic to. And I really just felt her tight, controlled performance was exactly what that movie needed. So
Yeah. Yeah. His name was Rubens.
okay,
Um, so the thing that held this movie back for me, and maybe it's unfair, and maybe I just need to, sometimes you need to see stuff twice to really make sense of it. This could be that case. But the thing that held this back for me is there's so much emotional payoff when we get to the latter years in her life, and we
Yes.
don't see the first, even if it's just a few things from Sao Paulo, like
Yep.
when they make the move from Rio to Sao Paulo, if we just get a little bit more of her life raising those kids by herself, and some of the search and some of the fight to find Rubens. And this is why I kind of preface this is I also don't know like how well this story is known in Brazil, because I know that it's based on a book by the son and Marcelo, right?
Yep.
And so there could be some of that stuff working. Like when you make a movie for in a country, you kind of expect that the people watching it are going to understand some of the background, right?
Sure.
Kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
inherently. So
Yep.
that could be a me problem. Fully willing to admit that, but we needed more from me in Sao Paulo, so I understood some of who she was after. Because I just felt like the back end, even though it was still very emotional, it didn't quite pay off like I wanted.
No, and I can see why because she's almost a different character, right? In a weird way. Again, it goes back to physical transformation. It's like, okay, I hate when TV shows go, oh, 10 years later. It's like, oh, no, I don't care about this person 10 years in the future because I don't know this person 10 years in the future.
Right,
You
right,
know, I know this person now. I've been following this person for 9 seasons right now. You can't do that. I hate it
yeah,
when they do that, but I get why they do it, but I hate it when they do that. And in this case, in this movie, you see her looking different. She's still her, but she looks different. And to see that person type of have that release and that type of trying to get that payoff, it just falls a little flat, only for the reason that we wanted to see it from the woman that we spent so much time with. So I
yeah,
get your point, and I kind of that's probably why it was maybe even lower on my list than it probably could have been. But in your case, it
yeah.
was much lower. So with that being said, give me your number 7.
All right, so my number 7 is Alien Romulus.
Interesting.
Man, this movie is its pacing, its lead performance. I mean, one of the things that's scary about Alien, or at least I can imagine if I was Kaylee Spaney, the lead actress, is that you're following up on one of the best action performances of all time in Sigourney Weaver in the first two Alien films, and she completely bodies this role. Right? It's just for this to be like the sixth film in this franchise and it to be this good is just incredible to me. Just one of those ones that sometimes you see stuff in the theater and it's like, God, if I had watched this at home, I probably wouldn't have loved it as much as I did. And to have gotten to the theater and seen this one, it really just it's just one of those films that was perfect for what it was. I don't know if this film could ever make like a top, my top three. But that being said, it's still just a ton of fun.
I mean, it was your number 6, so it made that next level there. Or I mean, your number 7. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's close. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? So just to kind of give a recap of Will's top 5 or top 10 through or 6 through 10. Number 10, Flow/Inside Out, doing Will things. Number 9, A Real Pain. Number 8, We Live in Time. Number 7, Alien Romulus, and number 6, Nosferatu. Now that we've said it out loud and it's now here in the podcast airs, are you happy with that?
I think so. Alien Romulus, I'm kind of standing for a little bit because I think that films like this are what going to the movies is about. It's
Yeah.
about experiencing something with other people around you, and so there are some of these like I'm thinking more about like A Complete Unknown and I'm Still Here as like maybe these movies are actually a little bit better, or like The Substance. I have that just outside. Those three are probably better films overall than this, but I can't let this one go. So that's the
and
one.
that's why movies are such a personal experience, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we love them. Okay, that means then my number. Let me get my list back up. My number 7, Dune Part 2. This is a much much better movie than the first one. I'm sorry, it just is, and I get it. The Batman origin story, right, has to
Mhm.
exist in order to get to 2 and 3. It has to
Yeah.
exist. And I get it. I understand it. And I understand it even better now after watching. And I am going to go back and do something I never thought I would do, which is rewatch Dune 1. With that being said, I do still stand on the premise that this is a much better movie. There's much more happening, right?
Mhm.
All of the setup has already taken place in one. So
Yep.
they are jumping right into the story, and you are in this story right away. And now,
Yeah.
right from the get go, you are paying attention to how these family or the Freeman are going to um, get along with the mother, Lady Jessica,
Mhm.
and how Paul is going to interact, trying to navigate both these fields. And what I love about this, and this is probably what everybody loves about it, is just this the whole storyline of is he or isn't he, right?
Mhm.
They play with that so well. Is he the Madib or Madab or however way you pronounce it? Is he the prophet? Is he the
Yeah.
chosen one? And you have characters on both sides that you like when we talk about I forget his name, but the Stilgard. What's the character that plays him?
Javier Bardem.
Javier Bardem. He believes in his heart that this is the prophet. And every time he says it all the time, as written, as written. Here's why this movie's so good, especially at the end, Will. When they start talking, especially when you get that last as written line, right?
Mm.
It's so good because everything comes from a directive from Lady Jessica,
Mhm.
who seemingly those Bene Gesserit could have been the ones to write those books in the first place because
Mhm.
they can ultimately write something and make it come true later on, right? Am I off?
No.
That's the brilliance of this movie, right?
Yeah.
And it leads to do we think I still don't really know if Timothy Chalamet is the chosen one or not, but he is playing the role at this point, and you still have a Zendaya whose character doesn't fully want to believe it because it goes against her identity of believing in those things in the first place.
Right.
I caught on. I get it. Sign me up. Let's see the Holy Wars. I gotta know. I think I caught on and I got the gist of everything. There's still a lot of questions, and I will say because I still don't know all of the details of this movie, and I have to go back and I gotta kind of relearn a lot of things because I was confused and I was asking questions on Google along the way to make things make sense to
Yeah.
me. It did not take away from the movie. It only helped it, and I really enjoyed Dune Part Two. So that's where it's
Yeah.
at for me.
Yeah. The only reason why I like this film is the way he rides that fucking worm, man. God damn that scene.
Stupid.
That scene is so good. When he mounts that thing and that music swells, dude. I about crap myself in the theater. It was so good, man. No, I'm not going to give away what this is. I obviously have this in my top 10.
Okay.
So we could talk about it now, and I won't give it away where I have it ranked. But um, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you're everything you said. Perfect.
Okay.
The the biggest thing here for me too is like the transition that you see in Paul Atreides from not wanting any of this
Yep.
to like suddenly being consumed with it, and that at first he wants justice for these people,
Yep.
but now he wants the power and the vengeance that comes along with it. And you can see like Zendaya sees it, and we're supposed to watch this movie through her eyes, right?
Yeah.
Her character's eyes. So yeah, the whole idea of speaking it into existence, I mean, is just I think the most powerful thing that we have as
Yeah.
humans, because if there's enough people that believe something, it's true. And
Yep.
I really think this movie is, the book is 50 years old, 60 years old at this point, maybe even 70, and it speaks so much about what we're going through right now, in like power and the way it overtakes the person in power, and all of a sudden, it's about that person getting what they want, and it's no longer about like that person trying to bring other people up. And that's what we're seeing in the transition that Paul goes through from the beginning of this film to the end.
Okay, so a couple things to note. I want to talk one onto the actual storyline, and then two to the thing that makes me ultimately like knock it a little bit. So let's talk to the first one though. I want to stay positive here for a second. Um, the thing that is happening in very real time here, where we are right now, is that people feel justified, and when you see the justification of why they're acting the way they are, it is easy to somehow support that power at times, right?
Mm.
So like you're rooting for him the entire time because he's on the side of, wanting to do right by these people. But then something happens and you're like, well, he's kind of left without a choice. But
Mhm.
is he left without a choice? You know what I mean? So like it's that thing, and now depending on where you fall on that side of the coin will then ultimately um, it will ultimately define how you view the rest of this movie, right? And
Sure.
that's the brilliance of the movie too. And we're gonna get to see more of that in the third one, which you do hope that he comes back down to a little bit, and that everything was kind of justified, and that he had to do what he had to do in order for the greater good of the people in whichever, you know what I mean? So, and I'm sure
Sure.
we'll ultimately get there, but like for right now, leaving it up in the air like that, I always think part twos are always better anyways because they're the most
Yeah.
intriguing of a three-part series, and
Yeah.
and that's probably the truth more times than not. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. It also allows like the second part of a trilogy always leaves. It's the most fun to play with and leave. There's so much left unsaid too that you can leave it in a dark place. You don't have to, close a loop. You can leave all of the juicy parts. This is why Infinity War is the best Marvel film of the Marvel series, is because it actually lets the characters feel the pain,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then the next one wipes it all away, right? The end game. So here, that same kind of thing is happening where we're getting all of the setup for what's to come, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Atreides. So
Yeah. My one knock, and it is a knock that I'm beating a dead horse on, but it is a knock, and I just stand on this right now. I love Timothy Chalamet's performance at the end where he's letting go, he's emoting, he's raising his voice, he's letting the power consume him, right?
mhm.
He's becoming the thing that strikes fear into these people because it's the thing that's going to save them in his eyes, right? So,
Yep.
with that being said, there are clear moments in my eyes that just are misses when it comes to like the way he is reacting to certain things that are happening. And they're
Mm.
just flat for me. And they're always like, if I was to watch this, I wish I would have wrote him down. One of the examples is like when he takes the water of life and he's
Mm.
coming back from it. I'm not getting enough pain from him or Zendaya. Like,
Mm.
I just feel like I don't want him overacting, but I want him emoting, and I'm not getting the emotion where I feel like the actors of the 90s, maybe I'm wrong.
Mm.
It's how I feel. I just feel like we would have got more emotion, more
Sure.
levels, because I feel like there's levels of these things, and I'm just not seeing. And it's not just a Timothy Chalamet thing; it is a full cast outside of like Teller, um, Barry Keegan, like outside of a couple of those names. I'm just not seeing it from this younger generation right now, and I want to because I think they're good. They're just not at that next level for me. So
Yeah, I think this might be a little bit on the roll, because he's a prince to a father who is stoic, right? So his whole life has been trained to not let emotion get the best of him.
oppress the
So
pain, oppress
yeah,
the
and
emotion. Okay.
I think that's what's happening in the second film is he's finding himself, and I think what we're finding is that maybe that's not the right person to find for a leader, and whether or not it's going to be the downfall or not. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Maybe there could be a little bit more here, but I do think there's something about the role that's kind of artificially holding him back.
Okay. I think I'll, because it's a conversation that I'm not asking the right questions because
Mm.
I always feel not complete when we end up finishing up on that topic. And I always come back to it because there's something I'm missing that I want to dive into more. I just haven't figured out how to ask the right question. So when we get there, I'll bring it up again in a future podcast.
All right.
My number six, let's keep moving. So my number six, Will, I think we have your five. So to finish up my top six is a movie that I guarantee not anybody had on their top 10 list of 2024. But it is for me. And I always get excited when there's a movie trailer that I'm like, okay, this is because there's not so many anymore that I look forward to going to the theater, and then the theater experience actually matches the trailer experience and surpasses it to me. And it was John Krasinski's If. It's just
Mm.
it scratches the part of me of what I love about human beings because of their desire to want to be these things.
Yeah.
It's so simple of a movie. It's probably got no place on a list where Dune is on it, Nosferatu. Like, I get it. I get it. But for me, I leave there feeling something. And that to me is the ultimate movie going experience. Can you make me feel something? And there's really not too much depth that needs to get into. I just felt like where like Wonka a year ago failed to fully get me there, if felt bigger, felt more fun. The scenes felt like the imagination, literally the imagination behind it was fun, and creative and different. And I really enjoyed the movie If. So was it part of your 84 at all?
Yeah, I saw it.
Awesome.
I think I 3.5 or something in that range. I mean, I thought it was a good movie. I definitely don't have it close to my top 10, but that's okay. I'm sure Alien Romulus is not on yours, so
Well, I haven't seen it, but it's funny because If to me is a 4.5, but its average rating on Letterboxd is a 2.9. That is, I was going to ask you that. What do you think your greatest range is of a movie that you gave something good and it's actually rated low? That's
oh, I
something
can
that
actually
oh,
if
you know
yeah,
it?
you can look at the stats, man. They have this on the stat board. Mine is
Really
Noah. Yeah, mine is Noah by Darren Aronofsky. I have it as a
interesting.
5-star film, and I think it's like a 2.4 or something like that on Letterboxd. So I think that's the one for me.
I will have to go back and find mine then. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Will, give me your number five, buddy. Let's crack this
Okay.
top five.
Yeah. So for me, I want to preface this by saying I think this movie is perfect, except for one thing, and
Okay.
it holds the movie back for me, and it takes me out of the film, and it's Nickel Boys.
Okay.
I watched this morning, absolutely devastated by it. When I was teaching ethics class and at the University of Toledo, I built my entire ethics course around inequality and racial. One of them was wealth. One of the sections was race, and one of the sections was gender. Right, so I taught about this stuff, so I'm pretty well versed in racial inequality, and this movie really gets it. I thought it was perfect, except for that first person point of view. There are times where they like go in for hugs, or when they're reaching for each other's hands, that it just felt so unnatural and took me out of the film. And I really wish that it didn't do this because I think it hurts the film. And I say that having this as my number 5 movie because I think it's otherwise perfect. I just all this, like we were talking about earlier, all the stuff with the shots of the moon and there's the famous poem Whitey on the Moon, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you see that in First Man by Damien Chazelle, which is like the perfect companion piece for this. Um,
Oh,
so
what a great
I
point. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I loved this movie very much, and I wish it was higher, but I just couldn't get over that first person point of view.
Okay. I understand. No, I get it. That was a big critique of that film. I'm going to hold back a little bit. It's a little
Mm,
higher on my list. Um,
okay,
and I'll give my thoughts when we get there. So,
okay.
my number five is one that's just outside of your top 10, I believe. I think you said
Mm,
this. Might be a little lower than I thought. And I'm shocked that I have this movie this high. I was floored by The Substance.
mm,
Um, floored by it. I found, and I'll tell you why I was floored. Let me just start off by saying the actual believability of any of this actually happening, right? So like there
Sure.
is you have to escape that. And I think at times they even aren't tight enough with their screws of even getting us to understand the rules of engagement in this world, right? With
Sure.
all that being said, if I had to, the cinematography in this movie, the visual shots, the parallels, like the story being told about um, uh, aging out as a character, and not even a character. The character in this case is just female in Hollywood, right?
Mhm.
And how that's a very real thing. I think it's better today than it probably this movie would probably be even more impactful if it's told 2005 because
Mm.
I feel like there is more of a place for the Hollywood actress at a later age in their career, but maybe
Sure.
it's better, but it's not still to the standard it should be. Um, and I just the pressures that come with it, the over sexualization of actresses and what they have to do in order to get something, the
Yeah.
just grotesque Dennis Quaid character. Like,
Oh yeah.
as much
Ugh.
as you think that people in Challengers are scumbags, this guy takes the cake. Like, he is just
No.
awful. Um, just I just couldn't believe. Again, this is a movie that probably is propped up higher to me because of my
Mm.
expectations of it in the first place. Didn't want to watch it. I do. My least favorite horror is body horror. I
Mm.
don't do well with it, and it's the one thing, and it's not even like I'm scared. I'm just physically uncomfortable, and
Sure.
that's part of horror. And for that, I
Mm.
put it off for so long. But when I actually watched it, I was like, God, there again. Talked about Nosferatu and some of their ending scenes. There are visual scenes here at the end that will stick with me forever. So I was just
Yeah.
shocked that Substance is number 5 for me. So
Yeah. Um, I guess I might be wrong on this, but my review of this was it's 26 minutes too long.
I read it.
And
Yep,
yeah, yeah, and
and
the
it is.
reason
It
why,
is.
yeah, and but it's I don't mean that in like they should have been cutting things here and there to make a tighter movie. I think the movie is very very good until the last 26 minutes, and
Oh,
then
you
it loses me. The
interesting.
when she we come out with the freak Sunshine Sparkles or whatever her name is,
Yes. Yep.
that it loses me a little bit there, and it left it off of my list specifically for that last scene.
Yeah, I think something along the lines, or maybe it was Dave's I was reading with you. I thought it was yours, but it could be Dave's. The idea of it felt like it went more comedy towards the end than it did.
Mm.
Um, maybe that was Dave's. I kind of liked
Yeah.
that balance. For me, I thought it was the last 26 minutes, whether it's 26 minutes or not, but the last whatever, when I started ramping it up, it really worked for me. Like it was the
Mm.
thing that because it was so outrageous, of,
Yeah.
a boob coming out of a vagina or whatever.
Yeah.
I felt like it was, it reminded me of Beau is Afraid, and I
Mm.
just like it when filmmakers are taking chances, and it felt like this was a movie that took a chance, and I rewarded it for it. So, um,
Gotcha.
that's where I was at. But Will, I think we have. What was your number 5? Give it to me one more time.
Nickel Boys.
Nickel Boys. What was your number 4 movie, bud?
All right. My number four movie was a movie called The Bike Riders.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. So this is another one of those directors that just kind of gets me, or maybe I get him. There's something melancholic about this film, something like a love story to the way we used to fit together as humans, and how we don't do that anymore. How we used to be able to find community, even if it was a weird one like this, where people weren't necessarily all that nice to each other. They at least had each other,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really impressed with this film. And also, there's something about the way you have the initiators of the group, right? The Tom Hardy and Austin
Butler.
Butler and Michael Shannon. Like you have the old group trying to just be together in a way, and this is the way that they chose. And then you have the younger generation kind of encroaching on their territory and turning it into something completely different than what it was originally, and kind of stealing it from them. It just really worked for me. And I just thought the performances were, Tom Hardy, I know, is kind of a love him or hate him kind of guy. I just loved him here, in Austin Butler too, just kind of distant, but not really. It just is one of those movies that just really worked for me.
It's so funny. I didn't know anybody hated Tom Hardy. I love him. I don't know how anybody could
Oh,
hate Tom Hardy. Uh,
make fun of
I
his voice acting, I think.
uh, oh
Yeah,
well, I love Do you
yeah,
feel in charge? I'm a Tom Hardy guy through and through, but I'm also an Austin Butler guy. I really enjoy Austin Butler, and I love Michael Shannon. I think he's underrated, and just people forget how good he is.
yeah.
What movie did I just watch that he was in? Um, I forget.
A Different Man.
Anyways, what was it?
He was in A Different Man. I don't know if you
A
watched
Different
that
Man.
this
That
year.
was the movie. Yep. Thank you. Anyways, I Jeff Nichols. Let's talk about him just for a minute, because
Sure.
on paper, before I see the movie, his stories that he chooses to tell, I'm
Hmm.
like, holy crap, this is my guy, right?
Yeah.
Because he does speak, like were saying, he speaks to you in some way. I love Mud. What was the other Midnight
Take
Special?
Shelter.
Right? Take Shelter, Loving, like all these stories. I love the way they're shot, visually, the way they look. I love the pacing to them. With that being said, I've left every single one of those with there were some highs and there were some lows. In the
Hmm.
Bike Riders, I talk about a movie. There was only a few movies this year where the trailer got me so piqued interested, and this was one of them. Where If made it go higher, Bike Riders made it go a little lower for me. But again, I still really enjoyed the movie, thoroughly liked it. It quite missed. Maybe it was an entertainment thing of just like where I wanted the story to go, and it didn't quite go there. Um,
Okay.
Maybe I wanted a bigger showdown or whatever it was, and it
Sure.
just kind of was done and over with. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
the story it was doing, I thoroughly enjoyed, and aging out, new wave taking over, and they've got a new wave of doing things, and it seems like even though they're bad guys, there was still like a respect factor. It's like new mob taking over old mob. Um,
Sure.
it's just the story is old as time, but I really enjoyed it. So, um, but that's where I'm at with Jeff Nichols. But I get why you like him. He's
Yeah. I
and it
mean,
doesn't seem like he makes a movie all the time.
no, I mean, this was the first one since Loving, which was 2017 or 18 or something.
Yeah, yeah, he really takes
And
his time.
yeah, well, yes, for sure.
Why? What you're gonna add more to that?
Oh, I was going to say there's some of the directors, because of COVID. I don't know if they had projects that just got sidelined, or if like the Bike Riders was made in 2020 or 2019 and then just didn't see the light of day for 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure. I didn't really look into that, but he's one of the ones that I wonder if COVID kind of affected his scheduling, because he's kind of like got an independent, not blockbuster. He wouldn't be the, hey, this is the one we need to get to next film, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Nope. Totally agree. Um, okay. Top four here, Will.
Yeah.
My fourth, I had as high as one.
Mm.
It dropped a little bit, and there is a reason why. And it's only because when you start getting to the top films, you start picking nits, and you're
Yeah.
trying to find where and why. But I do think that there's a clear separation here between four and the other ones. And I also think there's a separation personally for me with my top two than my
Mm.
3 and 4.
Yeah.
This is the last movie I rated at a 4.5. The next three I have are fives.
Mm.
Number 4 is Anora for me.
Okay.
Sean Baker's Anora. So I came on to Sean Baker, and I've seen most of his work, actually, shocking enough. I've came on him later, and mainly because of your love for him. I watched Florida Project, really enjoyed that movie. And I love the way he storytells. This movie's bonkers.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. The story for me, the only negative I had is basically on Mikey Madison's character is known this boy for all of a short period of time. We're talking
Yeah.
a week, maybe a day. I don't remember what it was. Like the
Sure.
totality of the relationship. So I struggle with the idea of, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I misinterpreted this, and you can tell me, and it might help me with the movie. But like at the end of this, is it the idea of, am I supposed to believe she was in love with that man?
Mm. She was in love with the idea of finally having something.
Okay. For that reason, because that's a very selfish trait, right? And I
Mm,
get it. She hasn't had it, but it's still at the end of the day, she's upset now that she's going to go back to what she had, and now she's lost this kind of golden ticket, so to speak, because I don't believe she's in love with him. So I
sure.
struggle with that. Now, with that being said, I still have it as my number 4 movie. I still buy
Yeah.
in mostly to what she's done and what the character is believing.
Yeah.
I believe she made herself feel like she was in love with him, whether she
Mm,
really is or isn't. But the way it played out in this movie is tremendous. All the characters, the
yeah.
supporting cast is tremendous. That was my only issue, is that we get to this big release at the end of this movie, and I thought maybe it was more about her feeling used at the end of the movie rather than like her losing this great love. Tell
Mm.
me where you're at with Honora, and if it's higher up, you can tell me later.
Well, no, it's my number three, so it's a good time to
Okay.
talk about it now. So, when I said she was in love with the idea of finally having something, I didn't mean that transactionally. I
Okay.
meant this movie is about transactions, right? It's about
Yes.
the things that we sell and the things that we compromise in order to have anything, right?
Yep.
And that's what our society is built on. And what Sean Baker, I think, is exploring here is that idea of what happens to the transaction when it becomes more than that. And I think what um, Honora is going through in this film is a almost like a revelation, almost like a I might have a chance to not have this life anymore, where I have to sell myself in order to survive. We don't know her past. We don't know why she does this. We don't even know if it's something that Sean Baker looks down on. I don't think he does, because of his other films. But and I don't either. I think that people fall into circumstances all the time that they just have to do what they have to do. And for me, what this film is doing is it's positioning Honora as seeing a light at the end of the tunnel and realizing that she has no fucking control over that. It's not up to her what her life is about. It's about the oligarch. It's about the people who have money and power, who are allowed to do whatever the hell they want, and the people who don't have money and power are always going to be subjugated, and they're always going to have to sell themselves in order to have anything. And for me, that's what this film is about. That last moment is not her being sad that she lost a love. It's her coming to a realization that this might be all that she has.
So I kind of got there with your end piece for sure. To me, I said the word use, but I think it could be wrapped up the way you said it because it makes more sense that way. I think we've had this conversation, and I won't go too far down it. I always struggle with the choice part, right? So like,
Mm,
and I think a lot of it has to do with the idea of, and maybe it's just because I haven't been bought. So for me to say I can't be bought is very easy for me to say right now. I'll go that route. But I do know that to my core, right? One of the things that have always kind of made me steady as a human being is like this idea of